Hello and welcome back, and there you go. There is a big old pile of UniFi equipment all set up there. If you saw our video from a week ago at the time of recording, there's around about $5,000 of equipment distributed all the way around this work in progress office. And within that week or so, I'll be straight with you, there have been a bunch of things about UniFi that I really like, bordering on love, but unfortunately there's also a bunch of things that is really starting to grate me, and I would argue starting to err into hate territory, and that's the purpose of this video. If you're on the verge of going towards UniFi Ubiquity systems for your home, office, or even enterprise deployment, hopefully this video will help you decide if some of the hurdles and some of the high points that I've encountered within just 1 week of a 2024 modern up-to-date UniFi setup will suit you and your needs. Let's crack on and go. I know I'm back here in the studio, but if you thought I was going to sit on the floor for the rest of this video with my knees, you must be joking. Right, so if you are someone who has been utilising UniFi in the past or have heard rumours and been researching up to this point, let's be honest, the most obvious, really attractive thing about it is that simplicity. And I'll tell you right now, in 2024, it continues to be that straightforward to set these devices up. I have dealt with Netgear, Cisco switches, I've gone to the other end to QNAP, unmanaged switches there, and I've got to say, of all of them, none of them have been giving me the user-friendly experience that I've been utilising on the UniFi switches, the UniFi UDMs, the UniFi basic switches like the Flex switches there. All of them will give me a very easy experience, to the point when I just connected everything together like you saw in that as in progress setup at the start of the video. As soon as you log into the mainline UDM system in the middle, the Dream Machine there, that Dream Machine was able to just see everything, and including it and attaching it was not a case of scanning local area networks and putting in individual passwords. It was not a case of having to re-identify and allocate these devices, entering MAC addresses manually and very specific username passwords. It was, there it is, .add. If there was update, it then installed the update automatically. And the same when we look at the installation of applications and services, things like the display terminal stuff like the Surveillance Protect stuff. These are one-click installs. It does depend on the system you go for, and therefore where all of these UniFi appliances are going to reside. But it has to be said, from updates to management on the system, that streamlined easy use experience has not changed in 2024. And if anything, they've doubled down on that. The toys. Let's be honest, this isn't Mattel, but at the same time, I don't know many tech platforms in the market which have such a significant hardware software arm with such a wide range of appliances. Don't worry, we'll come back to that later on. But it has to be said, notwithstanding the just mainline PoE switches, when you scale up, they scale up. Everything from Wi-Fi 7 APs, access points, Wi-Fi routers that you can dot around all over the place, inherently mesh ready. Then you've got fisheye cameras, edge AI cameras for surveillance. Then you've got dedicated NVRs, you've got dedicated PoE devices and managed switches, and then integration of all of those into singular managed devices that have got the storage and support of those surveillance cameras while also having managed network environments and security gateways. It is an incredibly elaborate portfolio of hardware and toys to play with, right the way down, by the way, or to that massive display we showed you at the beginning at point of sale, or just displaying resource information, or just a website, or a custom in-house API. And then on top of that, you've got things like the rack, the actual rack tower that you saw it rolling on, that tiny little 6U rack. It was a piece of WAS to build. It was easy. All of those little toys, all of it integrated in together. I like the fact that they've gone for that kind of singular brand, but all the little components you're going to need to go for. But we will return to that later. This is sort of on par with that whole easy utility, but I think we also have to talk about network visualization. Very, very, very few network switches I've ever used show the whole topography and the whole network visualization as well as I have seen on the UniFi platform. I get it's made for enterprise, and we'll talk about pricing later on as well, but I would say the fact that the network layout is tremendously clear to the novice. But on top of that, the fact that the filters there allow for a greater degree of examination of network and internet flow, understanding at a glance just what bandwidth is afforded via external network connections to each individual device and how they are mapped on an individual created VLAN level or just on a physical connected level, dynamically and live, cannot be understated in terms of its ease and utility. This may seem like a rather minor one, but those that have followed the channel for a while, whenever I've talked about NAS brands like QNAP and Synology, will know that this really hits where I want to hit it, and that is those little LCD panels. If you're not familiar with UniFi, or at least you're in a building that uses UniFi, but you're never within the physical proximity of the device and you rely on the sysadmin to do everything, it has to be said, those little displays are more than just doing what looks like a crappy old Windows XP screensaver. You can configure, you can monitor IP, you can find out system information from that, restart, initiate updates, system temperature, all of that. And once you connect them all together in that quote unified network there, they actually mirror one another very, very well and are able to give you real-time information in and above just the singular system device that's there. It being completely touchscreen, it allowing you to configure it at a glance and a single action is tremendously appealing to me. And once again, in 2024, as we're seeing more and more brands start looking at their solutions and thinking, we need to simplify this technology, I like that that is pretty much the standard across the bulk of their managed systems. This last point may split opinion, and definitely it's going to be one that I think existing UniFi system users may not even be aware of. It is, when it comes to the configuration and setup of most of these devices, I've talked about it using the utility of the GUI and the dashboard utilised on UI.com, more on that in a moment, but I've not really talked about when you're connecting all of these devices, what if you don't know the order? What's the best thing? Say you're running a Dream Machine there that doesn't have PoE, you know, maybe it's not the special edition one, so you're going to have to use a PoE switch to power those cameras, power that display and more. What's the correct way to put it all? Well, they've actually rolled out a UniFi GPT app. It's free to access, you don't need to log in to use it, and during our initial setup, I actually used it a couple of times and went, these are all the bits and bobs that I'm throwing in. Show me out the best way to connect them together. Now, of course, we are trusting an AI LLM kind of learning model there to give me that information based on existing protocol, but that is still presumably a unified database that is accessing an existing set of information. Is tailored, a database there tailored to UniFi. Even went as far as to tell the system, tell the application, I want to set this up as offline as possible. I want to do it with no internet connectivity, and I want to set it up. And it didn't bar that from me. Of course, made suggestions that it would be better if you did have the internet, but at the very least it allowed me to ask very quickly, set up questions. And although, let's be realistic, UniFi did not invent GPT models, they are everywhere. It is an official one that has no account restriction, and from there it allows me to get real-time information based on a unified database to resolve problems within my system. I'm not going to call it an enterprise-grade solution, but I think there's a lot of SMB and smaller users that don't have access to an immediate sysadmin that will appreciate it. But let's be honest, you don't be around as long as UniFi has been without making some enemies, right? And I'll tell you right now, as good as all that stuff I just said was, some of the things I encountered within that just 1 week of an in-house UniFi setup from the ground up in 2024 ruffled my feathers somewhat. So let's go on those. Let's face it, you saw this one coming. The price. When it comes to UniFi hardware and hardware network equipment, there is an awkward discussion to be had about the price point on these devices. Now, by awkward discussion, that's not me saying I think it's ludicrously expensive. I don't actually think, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the cost of Cisco, when you look at the cost of enterprise-grade networking equipment and singular unified platforms, that UniFi is out of this world expensive. There are exceptions to the rule. Some of the PoE switches there, the uniqueness in the market, I think, does command a certain price tag. Again, talking about the Dream Machine there, some of them being integrated with storage, so you've got an integrated managed switch with a secure network gateway with a secure surveillance platform all built in. There is a question that is more unique and might command a higher price tag. But some of the other devices, no. I think the price tag they've gone for there is around 10 to 15% more than average products in the market. But the hardware standard, the kit you're getting inside when you break it down, is definitely about 20 to 30% lower than the majority of things in the market. Now, of course, you're not paying for the hardware really with UniFi. You're paying for, as the name suggests, the unification of all of your network equipment, i.e. the software. But it has to be said that the pricing of UniFi hardware is kind of whack when you look at what you're getting for your money. Existing UniFi users, of course, are going to highlight that talking about the existing hardware in the product space of UniFi and then comparing it against products that are arguably beneath or above it in the hardware chain isn't really fair. You're talking about a product that is designed to be an ecosystem. The bulk of UniFi products, although many of them can be used on their own, many of the switches, for example, or the NVR products, it has to be said that they are certainly being designed with a larger unified larger ecosystem in mind. Whether it is that you go for a standalone gateway product there, or you going for something a little bit beefier with some storage and other applications thrown in, and then add to that with individual switches from PoE to other surveillance products all being rolled into that network alongside Wi-Fi products, and of course surrounding environmental products for home security and business security there. And in terms of value, that ecosystem with things like the cameras not requiring licensing as long as they're utilized in a UniFi ecosystem, more on that later on, I will say does make things a little better. We have to give them a bit of a benefit of the doubt there, but I will say that from what I've seen online when it comes to the hardware inside these devices, for example, the NVRs there, some of the hardware architecture there in terms of the CPU, the afforded memory and more, just seems a little bit less than what we're seeing in the rest of the market. Even when the products themselves in some cases are not bank-breakingly expensive, there's still features missing such as direct HDMI output and standalone kind of surveillance deployment there, which with a solution like this you can't really do. And other systems and other solutions in their portfolio provide some of this, but then that's what I mean about things having to be integrated into the ecosystem in terms of that hardware price point, when there are devices in the market at similar pricing to this that provide you just a bit more hardware for your money. This particularly extends, I would argue, to the surveillance kit. The surveillance kit, there's some good stuff. Those Edge AI cameras, as mentioned earlier on, some of the easy deployable PoE and low power USB cameras. But again, given the state of cameras in the market and what you can actually get these days, the price versus what you are getting, whether you're going to factor in licensing, more on that later on, is questionable. Why can UniFi create a software platform that is arguably more simple to navigate than the majority of other software in the market, but yet navigating their own website for a hardware solution across their portfolio will give you a migraine trying to work out which piece of equipment you need? Honestly, nosebleed territory. Do I need myself a Dream Machine there? Do I need a Dream Machine that's got storage? Do I need the Pro? Do I need the Max, the SE Special Edition? Then when I go to the cameras, when I go to the Wi-Fi spots, at least with the Wi-Fi spots, they've stuck U6, U7, so I know that it's Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 7, but I only know that because I work in network tech. If I don't work in network tech and I'm just looking for a solution to solve things, yes, they've got buyer's guides, yes, they've got a helping hand, and yes, they've got that GPT thing, but navigating the options of the solution. I know there are going to be some users that think I'm being really pedantic, but just hear me out. Let's say I wanted to go to UniFi site right now and start building my setup. I'm going to go from a router into a switch, maybe into an NVR system there for security. So straight away I'm looking for a router. I go to the top. Which one of these two options I'm going to go for? Wi-Fi? That feels the right one. That feels like what I should be going for if I'm going to be looking at getting a router system, right? If I select Wi-Fi there, it then breaks me into Wi-Fi access points, a little Wi-Fi points, but not really a router. These are APs. Even when I select, for example, the wall option there, all the way along, all I'm seeing right now is APs. So what about if I go into the Cloud Gateway section? The Cloud Gateway, you're thinking maybe Cloud Gateway. It's the gateway perhaps to the internet there. So I look at these options here. I look at something like the Gateway Max, but then of course I do a little bit more digging and there's a router. Now, that should be a little clearer there at the top. I know I'm being pedantic, and yes, they have integrated that really nice unified design center. I know, and we've already talked about the AI supported thing already. And moreover, if I'm going to continue to be pedantic, if we have a look back at that top area, what if I'm to look at surveillance? For surveillance use, I think it would be fair to say that I'm going to look at camera security. Select camera security, and fair play to them, there are options, all the different kinds of camera, lovely stuff. But of course, I'm going to want an NVR as well to store that data. So let's go ahead, boom, go into video recorders. Here, lots of information about different deployments of NVRs. There's even recommendations for cameras. You go all the way to the bottom and look, they're recommending the NVR there, the Pro, the Standard, and that Cloud Key with a single 1 TB. Great stuff. However, at no point does it mention the Dream Machine. The Dream Machine, which can act as a cloud gateway, which can act as a multiple access point there, and forgive my OBS ruining that playback of that video there on screen, you can add storage media there to turn this into the NVR as well, with Protect being installed inside. And it's stuff like that. I think a user could very easily not realise that they could just get one solution that could take care of a lot of those things. And although it's a bit caveman, if you look at, say, QNAP's website here, that, you know, for their channel I have a tendency to use from time to time, they're using quite an old school methodology of displaying their options, and it can be messy. But I will say, you go to the product list. If I want to get a switch, I highlight switch, 2.5G, 10G, and I just select the switch I want. If I want to go for a router, there's their routers. If I want to go for surveillance systems, I look at their different surveillance systems, some of which have got storage and some don't. It's all kind of broken down in that way. And I know it seems breadcrumb and I know it seems old-fashioned, but it just, in the efforts to simplify this option here at the top, which I'm sure 99% of people like, I do find that being forced to have to dig a little deeper and potentially not know about other great solutions that they've got in this ecosystem, because remember, it's an ecosystem, can be annoying. You can even go to, I think it's evanmccann.net, I'll link to it in the description. That seems to be the only comprehensive place I've found that shows all of the solutions and their hardware capabilities side by side, and at the same time, even that makes my eyes hurt. It seems inconsistent to me that UniFi can present such a streamlined and all-encompassing user-friendly user interface on the software side. When it comes to the actual shopping and putting stuff in my sodding basket, it's nightmare territory. UniFi Protect, their surveillance platform. Now, before you think I'm just going to rattle on and say it's terrible, I'm not going to say that actually. I think it's very responsive. Again, as we mentioned earlier on, cameras added just like that, ready to rock. And if you go for either one of their dedicated NVR systems, like a 7/8 bay device that we were playing with, you might have seen it in the background, or you go ahead with the, again, like the Dream Machine there, the Dream Machine Pro, or the SE ones that have got storage built in, then you've got, you know, the Protect application downloaded. Even the cameras arrive with camera licenses included with them. By that, what I mean is you don't need a license. It's a very different thing. But at the same time, you can only use their cameras, which we've already touched on, hardware-wise, are arguably lesser than the same money will get you from a third-party camera. You can't use third-party cameras on their systems. Also, their cameras can't be used elsewhere either. You can only use their surveillance cameras within their surveillance systems, which then brings into question long-term usability of this hardware if eventually you do migrate over to another surveillance setup. Also, when you look at other surveillance platforms out there, and I know a lot of users do debate about when they go for their UniFi setup there, whether they're going to integrate a Synology NAS with Surveillance Station or go ahead and proceed with UniFi's Protect system and their cameras. If you go with the Synology platform, not only do you get to use your third-party cameras, and yes, there is the question of licenses there, but the range of features, there are more features built into Surveillance Station, whereas Active Protect seems to be more streamlined and more responsive and definitely even more user-friendly, but it lacks a lot of the feature set. Also, I'm not seeing much in the way of deep video analysis outside of very particular NVR systems from UniFi there. Ultimately, when it comes to the surveillance platform, I think I'm arguing more about the systems that integrate some storage and therefore some of the surveillance services. I think things could be done a little better in line with the rest of the UniFi platform, and I think the lack of ability to use third-party cameras when other elements of UniFi's network systems allow for third-party devices should be addressed. And this last one, frankly, is more of a personal rant. Where's the NAS? Let's be honest. If you're looking at UniFi networks, you're looking at all the surveillance systems in your network and the MVRs, you're looking at the Wi-Fi access point, you're looking at the displays, you're looking at the PoE switches, you're looking at managing your overall network there and the flow of traffic and data. Where's the NAS? The fact that they still haven't rolled out NAS, even though we're seeing more and more leaks and references online that there may be a NAS in development, and moreover from that it has been requested for donkey's years, seems madness to me, and a gap in the UniFi system that I am then forced to utilise in my pure, clean, single-party network to utilise a QNAP, utilise a Synology, utilise an Acer, utilise a Terramar, all of these already being used, by the way, in hundreds if not thousands of existing UniFi networks just in the UK alone, all add up to a massive glaring hole. The fact that they can't have a NAS system there in the midst of all of that, let's be realistic, stick Protect on it. You know, have it running my MVR, not just my data. Have it running my backups there. Have it running my logs, my storage. Because a lot of these UniFi devices are heavily reliant on logs and data and system config backups all being backed up onto that UI account that we mentioned earlier on, which a lot of users don't want to utilize. They want to keep the thing whole offline, and therefore they have to go to the third party to get a NAS, and thereby opening the door in their head that maybe a unified network isn't quite for them. It just seems weird to me. Why haven't you got a NAS UniFi? Why? I know you're watching this, you must be. Why haven't you got a NAS? But there you go. Those are the things I love and hate right now after a week of deploying a large-scale UniFi deployment in 2024. Are there things I've missed? Again, we are only looking at this singular deployment after a week. We're going to be doing a much deeper version of this video in the next 2 to 3 months, because some of these points are going to have to be addressed and we're going to add brand new ones to them, hopefully staying on top of this throughout the course of the year. UniFi's been around long enough that I think it should be able to stand up to criticism, and hopefully videos like this are how we affect change. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If there are points that I have missed, bung them down there. We'll get those addressed in the next video. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.